p.m. Flashpoint Radio. Welcome, welcome, listeners. It's another spectacular, sensational, amazing day. I am so thankful. I am so grateful for this moment. Believe me, listeners, I look forward to this time that I spend with you. Time that I spend in your homes, and whether you're traveling, listening to your girl Elise, I am excited to be in this space and in this place. And believe me, you are in for a treat. So if you have not already shared the link, you gotta tell somebody that something exciting is happening here in the studio of Flashpoint. And I have an amazing guest. He is waiting to be here in the space as well. And believe me, he is joining us from far beyond our shores. And we are happy. We are elated and excited to have Dr. Wilton McDonald, the man himself, right here on Flashpoint. So, I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. I mean, we have known each other for many years. He might not recall our first meeting, but I'm hoping that I'll be able to kind of jog his memory just a little bit. Right, Dr. McDonald? I know you are anxiously there. He is a well learned person. And listen, listeners, I have admired this young man. His ability to retain, his ability to go beyond the boxes, to be always learning is just phenomenal. So I'm just going to give you a snippet of who this person is. Now, for all of you who have probably dreamed of living and being in Europe and being in Poland, you know, you can speak to someone who has lived it and who is living it. And so, let's talk about his professional experience. Dr. McDonald, Dr. Wilton McDonald II, Esquire. He's responsible for providing legal services to Cayman and BVI domiciled funds, as well as several other jurisdictions. He has over 29 years of public accounting, financial services, and legal experience, setting up over 800 hedge funds, and has worked closely with startups as well as blue chip investment fund managers, administrators, and offshore counsel. Based primarily in the USA, United Kingdom, Luxembourg, Switzerland, Brazil, Hong Kong, China, United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Russia, and Japan. Wilton also serves as independent director and advisor to the alternative investment community. Wilton's investment funds practice has afforded him the opportunity to gain experience in general corporate, partnership trust, and commercial law, liquidations, as well as experiencing securities, secured lending transactions, and IPOs, stock exchange listing. And tell you, that is just the tip of the iceberg. So, Dr. McDonald, welcome to Sensational Sundays. And I am your girl, Elise. And we are hearing you loud and clear. So, the listeners, I just gave them a little snippet of who this person that I'm creating all this excitement about. And, after reading just that little snippet of your 29 years, I tell your listeners, he looks barely older than 29 years. Back when I was in college, he was way beyond his years, just going so quickly. What do you attribute your journey to, though, Dr. McDonald? What is the source of this motivation that you have?
Well, thank you, Elise. Again, whatever I can achieve in this life, it's just due to my spiritual connection. And I realize this more and more. And of the 9 universities that I've been to, mostly Ivy League schools, and those who do know me have always been thirsty for knowledge, just pushing the barriers. I'm here in Poland, and I'm just busy doing other things just than my vocation. It's been law, finance, economics, accounting, but I'm a bit of a restless soul in a positive way. I really would like to just advance the interest of persons of color. I'd love to help my own children better understand their existence, where they come from. And that's a fundamental question. It cuts across so many areas of our lives, and we tend to ignore the obvious. So, growing up in Cayman, those who know me, I've spent most of my life in Cayman, and now I'm in Europe for about 9 years, and here with my wife, who's from Europe, and my children. What it is that the kind of history and summary of the Caribbean is comprised of, speaking of a person of color, it is a West African story, and one that, yes, we know of certain Indians and, Caribbean-based Indians, American Indians, but the history that has been taught to me, it's been really limited given what I've learned in 3 years. I've delved into the deep end genealogy. I've done 8 different tests. I manage 50 different kits. I've traveled the world. I've been to Africa several times. And on my last visit, I discovered, I found out of 1.3 billion persons, I found one individual, Philippe Stefani, who shares a common ancestor with me. And Philip has Irish and French roots, and he has a sixth generation Malagasy, and his parents are African, and he's a son of Africa. And yet, you'd think that the odds of that happening would be worse than getting struck by lightning in your living room. And I was able to find this, and this summer I'll be off to New Zealand and Australia. I will be taking my DNA kits with me. I'm not a scientist. That's one thing that I have not furthered past high school, but I'm a quick learner. But what I have found, Elise, is that our history. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Now, I have to ask you, amidst all that I just read about you, your background in law and finance and economics, and also being a family man, how do you find time to develop this sort of passion? And not only have you developed the passion, you have gone ahead and done the research and the history. And how important is our history to us, to who we are now?
Oh, well, yeah, I should be sleeping more because, I'm not a drinker, but my liver, yes, I must say openly, I need to sleep more, and I will be committed to sleeping more. I really I'm fascinated, more than fascinated. Not obsessed, but my family tree is bordering 560,000 members now, and I am learning new things. The newest discoveries would be the Sinclair family, and we heard of the Sinclairs in Jamaica. They're Scottish, Irish. They some of them arrived in Jamaica in the 1700s, and when I examined the DNA of a particular, the main Sinclair family, Dan Sinclair, who died in 1860, buried in Westmoreland. He's a haplogroup E, like myself. And we are told this story, and this is what I'm trying to debunk in Facebook and social media. And I pledge my life to really debunk the myths because we're told this story of a West African only story. And the leaders of today, whether it be Cornel West or Louis Gates III, whoever, whichever quack is talking, and I call them quacks because they do know the truth, they're surrounded with so much literature. The Ben Franklin essay of 1751. There's so much, but then there's so many records that are hidden or destroyed. And if you want to put all cards on the table, let's do that. And I challenge anyone to approach me, to reach out to me about the history and whatever I'm saying. And I would entertain any conversation with anyone because our history as Black people, as persons of color, we don't have to be colonized. We were leaders in the 6,000 years. And yes, I have to refer to a 6,000 year history because this is backed up by science. Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson of Harvard, he has established many books, the one called Traced, and he's established that all the Y chromosomal DNA has mutated in the last 5,000 to 6,000 years. So we're not talking about tens of thousands and millions of years. Perhaps the world, the Earth, it's a million years or more. Who knows? But humankind, this is the fundamental question that I'm asking myself, and I'm just asking you in the audience. Where are we from? Are we, as a scientific view, from apes or some missing link? Or are we created from a God? Are we divinely created? And what's the timeline? Where do we come from? And that's the fundamental overarching question that I've been asking myself and I've been researching. That alone goes across so many disciplines and lines. And I am convinced that the 6,000 year Earth, the history of mankind is accurate, is backed up by science, and that there's a lot of fraud and corruption that places persons who are connected to Africa. Well, Blacks are really globally placed persons. They're just not Africans. But if you look at the DNA haplogroups, that's A through E, and it doesn't go into alphabetical sequence. The flow genetic tree, it's really starting with E, and it goes all the way up to R and the last letters up to Z, but it's not always in alphabetical order. And the things that I have caught the DNA companies doing, like pigeonholing the E's, pigeonholing anyone. So I can be, and I found this person in the UK who is Lord Berkeley, who was born in 1785. He was an ex-governor of Jamaica, and his bio has been scrubbed to take away the fact that he was a governor of Jamaica. He was a son of an admiral in the UK, a blue-blooded person of means, of reputation. His descendants are members of the House of Lords today, Michael Berkeley, and it's pronounced Barclay, even though it's spelling it suggests Berkeley, but it's Barclay. And this is just one of many persons I've come across where they are of African origin, even though they may appear white, they may appear Caucasian, but they're African. They're living in the UK and other places. And this is not a story. The story of humankind is just not, oh, we just came out of Africa many, many years ago, and then we somehow migrated to the Middle East and then into the Western Europe. And this happened over such a protracted time frame. The time frame is shorter. My one trip to Madagascar, where I met someone who is my cousin along the same paternal line going back 1,000 years. That is not something to sneeze at. And again, I challenge anyone to just come to me and just say, Wilton, you're talking nonsense. I challenge anyone to say that the history books must not be rewritten about the history of blacks, about the history where we come from, that this has been a story that has been distorted. This has to be corrected for the sake of the next generation that follows. Again, we don't have to be colonized. And why it's so incredulous to feel that blacks have not contributed anything to society, even though blacks have been here from the beginning, from 6,000 years. They created cities. There was, if I want to give you a snap of shop of the world from the time of Adam and Eve to the descendants of Adam and Eve, the industrial cities of the Cain and the persons who, of course, are not following Christ. I mean, they built the large industrialist cities, and when it came for Noah to preach, happened around close to BC 2400, the time of the flood. They didn't have to listen to him because they said, "Well, you're a quack, and you're certainly not saying anything." They lived in large cities. They built large cities. They call it Atlantis, but it's the antediluvians. And from from the flood event, it destroyed everything. All these large cities and concepts they had of electricity. They had these vases and jars with certain rods, and they're able to create some form of electricity for themselves. I mean, these are black people. And where did the other races come from? I have been to all of these Neolithic sites, and I have gone away with just more questions than anything. I've been to Egypt, and okay, the pyramids are there, the one wonder of the ancient world that's standing today. How was it built and constructed? Were giants used? And if you understand the full book, and the Bible, it's really not 66 books, but 80. The original Bible that I feel a black king, and I call him a black king, James Stewart, in 1611, he commissioned the Bible to be translated to English. And this is something that's not in our history, because we see they painted over the white faces in the Tudor age. They're coming out with books. Miranda Kaufman wrote about the black Tudors from 1400s to 1600. That was not taught to me in school. I didn't know. I just said, well, look, you guys are from Africa tens and hundreds of thousands of years. You're in loincloths and in the tree. So why, and I'm building up what I'm trying to establish, why it's so difficult for people to understand why blacks have contributed anything. And I get the racism in chats when I talk about the history, and they're like, well, you guys, only you do is just walk around in a jungle and you fight and all of that. But from the point where man was created, where men lived longer, and the flood event, which was BC 2400, up to the time of after the flood with Nimrod, and then they tried to build Babel, and they had these industrial little, again, cities where they shied away from God, and they were doing their own thing. But then there was confusion. Babel, was deserted. People's languages, language confounded. And then Egypt, the Egyptian society and civilization took place, in the 2000 BC, and then the exodus of the Israelites was around 1500. So I want to paint a timeline so that people understand, okay, where I'm coming from. This is the version of Judeo-Christian teaching, and I'll call it side one. And in my Facebook page, I call it side one, because side two is everything else.
But they will ask,
the stuff that people prize themselves in science and learning because they're so learned, and everything else.
Then it begs the question.
So
the question.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I guess there's.
Why do I believe your history versus the history I've been taught all my life? And
Okay, you don't have to believe. Okay, my history, or the history of the Jewish, the Jewish God and the history. Let me just complete a timeline. So this is my timeline, and you can disagree, or you can agree or disagree. So for the Judeo-Christian teachings in the Bible, and there's a full Bible, not just the 66 books, but the full 80 books. And that's linked to the scrolls in Qumran they found about 2,000 years ago. So the Judeo-Christian record is this. We had the Adam and Eve. We had the Garden of Eden. We were created in the image of God. and we are created. These were black people. Were created about 6,000 years ago. And after creation, there was the fall. We know that Adam and Eve had to leave the Garden of Eden. There was a fall, and there were also called spiritual beings, angels, fallen angels that were cast down from heaven. And again, I'm just talking about the Judeo-Christian script. And these beings that are fallen, the Book of Enoch and extra biblical books, well, they're extra biblical, but they're really in the canon. They're supposed to be in the canon, but they've been tossed out. And they describe the Nephilim and the combining of the black indigenous people, and they call it the fallen angels, and they created giants. And the Book of Enoch goes into that. And when even Lamech, Noah's father, beheld him, he was bright. He was an albino. Apparently, he was likened to the angels. So it talks about the Nephilim, and they were large, they were giants, they were Caucasoid giants, but they were destroyed in the flood. The flood event only now saved and preserved Noah and his sons and their wives. So 8 people saved in the ark. And then civilization started again, but they're mostly black people. So the time of Nimrod post-flood, the time of Egypt, and then the Egyptian civilization was just simply cast aside, and they were destroyed almost economically because the slave labor left. Well, whether those people and persons, Israelites, were black, brown, or pink, we could all say that the Nephilim DNA found its way into the mainstream, but the blacks remained the majority of people on the earth. The pharaohs, despite what the movies tell you, and they tell you about Cleopatra and this and that, I mean, they were black people, whether they're from Samaria or Egypt. Those civilizations were in the 2000s up to 1500 BC. At the time of King David is 1000 BC. The time of Babylon was around 600 BC, in Nebuchadnezzar and these kings of Babylon, modern day Iraq. And then Media Persia was the successor in the kingdoms, and that's modern day Iran, about 400, 500 BC. Then Greece. And the Greeks now, as we know, by coinage available. And I have put stuff on. If anyone wants to still support, you could go to my Facebook page and they'll see it. The Greek coins, you could see the Negroid features of black people who are Greeks. Not this shiny, you talk about wavy hair and Alexander. My son is Alexander. And yes, from the ancient Greek, but they were black. And after Greece fell, you had Rome, and the Roman Empire was from 150 BC to 476 AD. And the tribes of the barbarians, they called them, they were mixed and mostly black. The Vandals, the Visigoths, the Heruli, the Saxons, these were tribes of Europe, and they were black, mostly black people. And they defeated Rome around 470 AD. And then they say, well, this is the Dark Ages. Well, it's not dark. You had a lot of civilizations, and they were all developing cities, and there was development movement. But according to modern day history, this is a black hole. So this is the kingdoms that occurred, and this is what happened. Now, what happened in the Tudor Age? That's where the big mystery took place. What happened during the Tudor Age? Something happened. Well, Henry VIII wanted to have his own church. He destroyed a lot of the black relics. He destroyed the icons and statues. And so it made it hard to really to capture the image of what ancient medieval UK and Europe looked like. And of course, we had the French Revolution in the 1790s, which destroyed, there's the last vestige of black nobility that fell. And again, anything after 1800s, this is like the modern world that we live in, and why it's incredulous that we don't understand. Our civilization has been enhanced over time. The sharing of knowledge, they call it secret knowledge in the lodges and the secret societies, and that's probably the newest religion that's out, Freemasonry. And you want to subscribe to that, that's your business. But it all happened from the late 1700s, 1800s. And this has changed the face of the world, and why it's so, again, the word incredulous to believe that blacks have contributed anything, despite our achievements in the antediluvian world, in Babel, in Egypt, in Babylon, in Media Persia and Greece and Rome, which were all black kingdoms. it's incredulous because our civilization has been enhanced by, I say, the fallen ones, the fathers of the Nephilim, but enhanced in a way that we are the space age. And we can't believe that the little old lowly people who lived prior contributed anything. And so we need to be colonized. We need to be controlled. We don't know our history. And if you look at the genealogies of a lot of the prominent families who claim to be the haplogroup R's, the modern day man, they fall short in a lot of ways. They don't connect. The dots don't connect and add up. I believe the people, even the ruling monarchy in UK, they have black blood. There's no doubt about it. Charles III, he's black. I'm sorry, but George Berkeley is black. And Charles III is black. I'm sorry, he is. A lot of the people who are in prominent positions have African DNA, and they don't disclose that.
No.
For whatever reason, it's hidden. They don't disclose it. So this is something that I challenge anyone. Put it on record. And I gave you the history of what I see the Judeo-Christian accounting and what I see as the history of the world according to Judeo-Christian scholars. Now, what is missing from the picture would be all the records, such as in Ireland, there was bombing by the IRA in 1922. Oops, sorry, 700 years of records are gone.
Wow.
And you have the ancient scrolls at Alexandria. Oops, sorry, those scrolls are missing and gone. You have Tacitus, who was a Roman lawyer in 1st century AD. Those records are gone. You have Donald Munro, who wrote about the blacks in Europe and in Scotland. His books are missing and gone. I'm sick in my stomach and tired of the records just missing and not available. And so who are you to criticize my view of the world based on Judeo-Christian philosophy and the Bible and what I believe? Because what is out there, it's not of the Jewish faith. It is contrary to the Bible, and quite frankly, it's Luciferian. Now, you may not study or worship the devil, but you certainly don't worship the Jewish God. So what else do you worship? You can worship your career. You could worship your kids. You could worship your houses. Whatever you do. But I am talking from a Judeo-Christian standpoint. This is just how I reckon the world, how it is, and the history of the world.
Okay, that is so much information. Listen, I have been writing notes, and there is so much to learn. Listen, if you don't know your history, where are you heading to? You're about to repeat the mistakes of the past. So we are taking a short break, Dr. McDonald and listeners, and we will be right back on Sensational Sundays.
When you need ultrasound that's safe and effective, you must visit Asai Ultrasound Imaging. They're conveniently located at number 4, Chestnut Center, Smith Road, Georgetown, Cayman Islands. With experienced technologists with over 20 years experience, their friendly staff will make you comfortable while you get your procedure done. Asai Ultrasound Imaging is open Mondays to Fridays, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays. Call Asai Ultrasound Imaging 345-949-2454 or 345-938-3426. That's 345-949-2454 or 345-938-3426.
This year, Dating Ranks Down, Flashpoint Media presents Point of Praise 2023 with a dynamic voice of Carousel Blondie concert, Sunday, June 4th, 7 p.m. at the Lion Center. That's not all. Come hear the likes of Rashonda Harvey, Georgia Isaacs, Dr. O'Neill Duggan and Omar Walters, and so much more. Come on out. Tickets are only $25 adults. Children $10. Children on 5 goes in free. You don't need to ask. Of course, yes, refreshments will be on sale. It's Scary Sales live in concert this June 4th at the Lion Center. You can't afford to miss it. Sponsored by Cayman National Cultural Foundation. Only Flashpoint Media.
Wow. Listeners, we are having a very interesting and informative discussion. And I will share the quote from Marcus Garvey, who said, "A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." And when you discover that the history that you have been fed might be just wrong history or deliberate in getting you to behave a certain way or to control you, it is just simply mind boggling. But Dr. McDonald has taken it upon himself to share this knowledge that he has been researching. He has been going from place to place and finding out about our true history. Now, this is amazing so far. I have learned such a wealth of information. But I ask the question, why would they want to keep the truth from us? Why do they scrub in these books?
Okay, let me just so Elise, is that the end of it all, and I see truth and reconciliation. They tried to do this in South Africa. We don't know if it's perfect or not, but at the end of the day, we have to come together as a people. What separate us genetically is only 0.5%. And I was thinking first it was 2%, but it's 0.5%. The phenotype of what we see and the genetic material that comprises us. And our closest animal cousin is a pig, is a garden variety hog, not a monkey or a chimp. So you see, this is the thing with us. The end game in all of this is not for me to say, go and take up pitchforks. No, I'll never be an advocate. Anyone that knows me, my father is still an active minister and servant of God. There's no way that I will, and I really pray. I have a prayer life every day. I'm praying because that's the thing with learning and knowledge is that when you transcend, and we look at Abraham, Maslow, and look at transcendence, and if we are truly have achieved, yes, the material things are there and nice to have, but at the end of the day, we have to come to a spiritual reckoning, and that's what I do every day. It's like Paul says, he dies daily to self, and I try in my heart to do as much good as I can in the time that I have here. So it's not to advocate. I mean, I'm married to a European, or you call it European, but Slavic, Eastern European. What is European is still to be determined with Euro blacks and people living here for 2,000 years. That is, history will not say so. And what I think is that we need truth and reconciliation. Look, the Cayman government has its finances to sort out. God knows you haven't done a consolidated audit for 30 years. There's probably unfunded liabilities about, I don't know, 4 billion. U.S. government right now, they're playing games with this debt ceiling of $32 trillion. I guess that's going to be approved when they only take in 2 to 3 trillion a year, half of which goes to social, services and Medicaid and this stuff. It's retarded. They will never be able to pay it back. So we're at the brink of, and that's what my study, my PhD has been on in derivatives. We're looking at 7,000 trillion of derivatives or more out there, including synthetics. And how do we grapple with the current climate change? We see sargassum washing up ashore. Poland was cold. I'm still wearing a sweater, for Christ's sake, and it's almost June, and I'm still cold. And we see that it's very hot in the Caribbean now with all these, again, seaweed and beach erosion. The climate is affecting us. We have economic situation and circumstances to grapple with. We need truth and reconciliation. So why this was done? The blacks at the time, the ruling blacks, and I believe from George Washington to the founding fathers, most of them were black. George III of England, King, was black. And was it described as black? Remember what you see out here, the genetic construct of haplogroups A through E, as they call it, African. Most of the people in power want to stay in power, and they will be in power. They don't disclose their DNA haplogroups. Most of the records have been destroyed. A lot of the Ulster Scots that came from Scotland to Ireland lived there in Northern Ireland. In 1922, poof, fire, 700 years of history, and now they're trying to recreate it. I mean, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but come on, how are you going to recreate 700 years of lost history, folks? This is retarded. And I said to them that all the records that I've come across from the books describing George Washington, he was called Colonel Washington, the Huguenot. He was black, tall and stately and swarthy, but a black man. And I always thought that the picture of him today, it just seemed that they have one picture of these VIPs from the Tudor age forward. So from 1400s already, there's always one whitewashed photo. So George Washington looked quite androgynous to me. I don't know if he's male or female, but so he was with his attire. But he was a tall, stately, swarthy man. He was a black man, and most of them are black. Ben Franklin, probably the one who is ruddy complexion, and he had an essay, 1751. And that's why I call those other guys like, Cornel West or Louis III, the Gates III, and there's other black scholars. They know better. They've seen the books. They have seen, of course, Ben Franklin's essay, 1751, where he said the number of pure whites in the world in 1751 was proportionably very small. The world was a black world. So when they kick up and say, oh, Cleopatra, no, she was not this and that. The Greek coins and the buttons and the brooches that I see coming out now, a lot of the old persons are passing away and their kids could care less what they do with the relics, but they have kept a lot of the relics away. And it was, I would say, pragmatism. They needed an economy, this global US hegemony, a global system to work. We need people to work. And the people in power, they need to go ahead, disclose what you are. Are you really haplo R, or you are an African? Most of them, I feel like George Berkeley. Remember, he was General Lord Berkeley, George Berkeley. He was a governor of Jamaica. He was a statesman. His descendants in the House of Lords. Most of these people in power, I feel, are haplogroups A through E. Let's get it out. I found the Sinclairs in Jamaica. They're haplogroup E. Let's get it out. Let's get all the missing records out. Let's put it all on the table and let's do it. We have the Picts people in Scotland. We were rumored that they were black and pygmies, yet the writings of Tacitus, the Roman scholar, the lawyer in first century, he was born AD 50. He observed the building of Hadrian's Wall. The records of books are missing. And when you look at it, if you put all cards on the table and put them, let's get all the DNA evidence out. Let's see all the VIPs, all the nobles, get their DNA out. Let's have a full and frank discussion. And this is where it's going to come to, because they need people to participate in this new world. It's going to be digital currency, whatever it's going to be, and what it's going to form, it's going to take. The world is economically bankrupt. Climate changes are happening and taking place. We need a new model. We need a paradigm shift. We cannot be doing the same things and expecting that different outcome. And we need to plug in to this new world. And how do we create it? By telling the truth about our history, that the world being mostly black, and that we can move on. And why I said it's so incredulous to believe that we didn't contribute anything as blacks is because the civilization that was previously enhanced by, you call it those dark powers. Certainly God inspires, but the devil probably inspires you and gives you a little bit more money. But, here you go. You had the antediluvians, you had Babylon, and, Greeks, and that they weren't worshiping God. You've seen all the images and the little pottery and what they're doing on the potteries and stuff. I mean, yeah, they're worshiping God and doing stuff like, okay. But, they were following whatever. They were blacks as civilizations that were accomplished. They built large cities and they lived in Europe and in the Americas. That's a story that we're not told. And why it's so difficult to accept that blacks did anything is because our civilization in the last 200 years has been so advanced into the space age. But you know what? At the end of the day, we all come to that apex, that spiritual apex. Whether you want to pray to your God, I pray to mine, because for me, it's Jehovah, it's Yahweh. I believe in a Jewish God. That's my faith. And for me, Ben Carson, when he was doing his neurosurgeries and separating twins, he prayed, because to this day, we cannot discover what happens in our brain. Everything concerning the complex human brain, and including the eyes, the nerves, we do not fully understand it. Science is indeed limited. At that level, you're so far up, you say at the apex, that you have to rely on a spiritual connection. So it is that Ben Carson prayed. And if we're to understand the human brain and the complexities there, and to understand advanced learning and knowledge, and yeah, you learn and so much, and you realize you don't know much of it, but I'm like a sponge. I can absorb a lot of things, and I can see complex relationships, even in the academic papers. And I said, well, this is hogwash. This is not. They're doing a study, and they find a fossil with a very old person, a man, and yet they're studying his maternal side. I said, you must be really stupid here. What the hell? Why are you studying his maternal side when he has a father and you can do the Y chromosome? They don't want to touch that because the Y chromosome is so stable. According to Harvard scholar Dr. Jeanson, it tells a story of this 5,000 to 6,000 years. It's scientifically proven that all Y mutations occurred over 5,000, 6,000 years. And that backs up where it puts blacks in Europe. It put blacks in America. Columbus most likely was black. There's a painting of him. I have it splashed on Facebook. He appeared to be, I mean, I grew up thinking there was a white Jesus. Now people believe that today, but even the people at National Geographic, and there are not a lot of brothers sitting on National Geographic's board, they will tell you that Jesus was not ethnically white. This was crazy. They had some model that they paid. So what we are told, I'm not about my 40 acres and a mule, what blacks are promised and they never got. Africa as a continent, it's not owned by even Africans. Yet, you see, this is what is happening today. They put us in Africa, and yet we don't own Africa. Then they tell us that we are not responsible for governing ourselves because we can't do it. But our past ancestors were all black, and they were doing fine. So Africa is a place that is closer home. I went there, and I just want anyone to just call me out on that. I found not my cousin from around the corner, a big Y cousin who shares a direct paternal link with me 1,000 years back. You cannot, what's the chance and odds of you doing it? So something is not right. Something where you find that I'm a haplogroup E, I'm African, yet the date of my most recent ancestor, it's dated 900 years. It's dated a lot, it's younger than a lot of the R's and the people who have, more evolved DNA. But then I come to read and just read alone. It's not about their being more evolved as an R, as a modern day European, but they have less attributes, DNA attributes than I have. That's like as a black person, we tend to be blood type O's. We can give to the world. We're universal donors. We have more DNA attributes. We have a lot that we need to come to grips with and be proud of as black people. And that's what's missing. If I see another slave movie, or now today you see Jonathan Majors on the cover of Ebony and him wearing some woman boots and fluffy attire at the top, that, of course, they want to demean blacks always. I mean, blacks are just simply criminals, not good enough. They could get paid less. They are thieves and thugs and all of that thing. That sort of myth, that thing that captivates us, where it divides us, that 0.5% of phenotype, and it messes with us. And we need to come together and say, you know what, let's put all the cards on the table. Let's go back and say, do you think the Judeo-Christian model that I painted from the time of creation to the antediluvian world, to Babel, to Egypt, to Babylon, to Media Persia, Greece, Rome, the 10 tribes of Europe, all those Heruli and Visigoths and Vandals and Saxons, and if that's wrong up to the modern day, then tell me I went away from all these places that are scientific. Easter Island, how did the movies get there? No one knows. Egypt, the pyramids, how were they built? No one knows. I went to Kirkwall in Orkney, Scotland. All this stennis and stones that are standing, the Neolithic, they just disappeared. They vanished one day. They just, someone's frightened them and they just ran away. So I got nothing from science, but I have the roadmap that's backed up by scrolls found 2,000 years ago in Qumran, where it says Scrolls of Qumran, the full Bible, 80 books, not 66, where it gives me a roadmap and what confirms for me what I'm seeing in the DNA record. I have 2 million records that I've compiled. I have a family tree that's going past 560,000 members, and all the prominent connections that I can attach myself to are African based. There's one lady who's Scottish in New Zealand. Me and my dad, we share 1,300 DNA matches with. That's on the autosomal matches. My mom, who's Indian, she has only 200 matches. And I said to myself, if my mom is Indian, what's going on there? There's something that's not right, because there are many matches that I have where my parents are on the same DNA platform and I'm matching that person. My parents don't match at all. So I call it the orphan files. So I'm an orphan. I'm simply an orphan. If my parents don't match and I'm matching them, especially they're at the generation level of my parents. They're in the 70s. And I am in my 40s. And I am matching these people, and my parents are not matching them. And I know that they're my parents. Their DNA is right there, confirmed on the same site. My mother is Indian, 98% Indian, 2% Slav. She has 200 matches. Across the same platforms, I have more than 15,000 matches with my dad. And the guy who I found in Madagascar, 6th generation African, he has about 5,000 matches. How is it that you have these people of African descent? We should have like no match because we're so ancient. We need to go back to the jungle. We need to be governed. We need people to watch and monitor us because we can't help ourselves. Fact is, we have done a lot given that we lack wealth. I mean, come on. What's taken out of the ground in Africa doesn't really belong to any African. What's in the Caribbean, you could see here, who live in the largest places in the Caribbean and our beaches that are washing away, but still, we don't own the wealth. It's not for us. So, what we are given, as the worst of all worlds. So we're relegated to a place. Even Egypt doesn't accept us. So Egypt say, oh no, we're not Africans. Maybe Egyptians are people from Mars. That came out to the movie Cleopatra, where they defiant. No, we're not African. So Egypt is not on the continent of Africa. They're not part of that African story. They're from another planet. I don't know where they are. And that keeps us at bay. It keeps us in Africa. So we're assigned to a place that we don't own. We are assigned to a place that is still more closely connected, as I proved in one case. How many more cases of Philippe Stefani? He's one man, one brother that I went to Africa. Didn't go looking. He doesn't look like me. We have no trait. I have no records of any African direct, cousins. None. All of mine point to either UK, a little bit in France, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. I don't have direct in Africa, but I went there and I found someone who shares that common link. And it's just a struggle. I manage kits, and I could see that those that are of the modern European profile, the R's, they have matches every day. Sometimes I see several matches many times a day. And I'm like, okay, I, again, have a high school science background, but come on, guys, you guys have multiple matches a day. Same amount of people are signing up each day. Since COVID, people have had the time. They want to explore their roots. They're signing up. But the ones that are of the African groups, we hardly match. And I called them out and said, this is a person that my dad played in the sandbox with. How the heck is he not matching up with him? He knows him and they have common ancestors, and yet he's not matching. Oh no, by the way, he was assigned to another subgroup that's up the chain, and you have to go all the way up to Jericho. You have to go all the way up to the chain to find a common ancestor, and that's what they do. No, he's not EF, he's EZ or ER. So who assigned these letters and boxes? As I put it in Facebook, it's like they put the African type people in quarantine. They put us in jail cells where we can't speak to each other. And they have made it difficult for us to establish matches. And they're the ones that are parsing the differences, which is less than 0.5%. What separates us as men from each other, women from each other, is just 0.5%. It's a very, very small number. It's not like we'd say the Trump supporters would think, oh no, I can't go to vote with this guy because he's not even a man. He's probably 2/3 of a man. But even then, I had a separate article that is not what it meant. It was gerrymandering, and it's a political ploy to get, reduce the black vote in the States. It was not that they were suggesting, how could the mostly black founding fathers suggest that blacks were 2/3 of a man? So I had a separate, if everyone is just curious about my thoughts, they can visit my public Facebook pages and they can glean more information. But look, we're students, we're lifelong students. And if you fail to be a student, then automatically it makes you a dummy.
Of course, and you will.
But we're lifelong students, and I am fascinated. I'm learning each day about my life, my ancestors, my links. And this is what I feel the Judeo-Christian model holds true. It explains languages confounded at Babel. It explains skin color by the Nephilim and pre-flood mixing. It explains the origins of cities, of developments. The giants obviously built them. And there were many news clippings about giants, bones that were found in the 1800s and 1900s. Can we find them in a museum? No. There are actually records, and this guy in the UK called Graham Hancock, he's demonized, he's laughed at, and he's like, oh, he's a quack. But he talks about these giants that existed, and he can show you where there are proofs where the findings were there. People found bones, and they didn't make them to the lab. They're not in display. If they found these bones, they could genetically prove that Caucasians would have a stronger correlation and tie with these giants than persons of color. And it would prove the Bible. It would prove so many things. It would make my job a lot easier. But they have, like all the books of Tacitus, of Donald Monroe, of the Bible, of the scrolls at Alexandria, of the records burnt in Ireland in 1922, each time they just destroy and burn and hide evidence and then say, you know what, you guys got to prove your case. How can you prove your case when you're not even fighting with one hand behind your back, but two hands tied behind your back? And that's the struggle and fight that we have to endure. It's incredulous. I can't even make this up. It's too much to bear. When you process everything together, it's just too much. And it's not the history that I learned in school. It's not what I was told. And yet, at this point, we just have to think truth and reconciliation. That's all. I mean, truth and reconciliation. Hope that works. And we come together, sing Kumbaya, and say, bygones be bygones. You guys did this. You pulled a 180 on us. And this history is not panning out. It doesn't work. It's false. It's been falsified. And blacks need to know their history. We all can be self-governing because we built these civilizations throughout time. But this is not what, we can't do anything. In fact, at one time, the Air Force had in a manual that blacks could not see good at night. That was in the 1940s or so. So we could not fly planes because blacks
we're going for a short break. You're still listening to Sensational Sunday. I believe it's a mouthful. But we're speaking truth and reconciliation. So we're going for a short break. And then you'll join us right back here on Sensational Sunday with your girl Elise And special guest in studio from Poland, Dr. Wilton McDonald II. Happy to have him. Welcome back, listeners. There is so much that I have learned from these moments that I have spent listening to what is being taught to us versus what is the truth. And what Dr. McDonald has said to us over and over again, he's speaking about truth and reconciliation. Let's just not be trying to find these differences so that we can be at war and animosity and feeling one race better than the other. But how can we move ahead? Teach this knowledge to our children. And he has a Facebook page, listeners. So I'm going to let him tell you later on where you can get more information because I know that you have just been tantalized by this information, being stimulated, and you want to learn more. And you can just hit him up on Facebook, just find his page, and you can learn so much more. So continue, Dr. McDonald, as you were saying.
Yes, I mean, I've presented, trying to summarize it in the last few minutes. I'm trying to present a view of the world. I'm not saying that it is the only view, but it's a view that I have been a student of the Bible. I've been a student of scriptures. We did not grow up as a boy. We had no television, and everyone who knows me knows of Wilton being one of the biggest nerds around. And I've absorbed a lot. But what the gifts that I bear, it's coming from Christ. And I'll tell you this from a spiritual standpoint, when I have a difficult problem, I'll go to sleep. And I literally, I mean, again, I get at a spiritual realm. I am having, call it a lucid dream. And when I get up in the morning, I feel energized. I pray about it. And whatever it is at work or in my practical life or the hobbies like genealogy, things click. And whatever obstacles I had, they disappear. I can gain knowledge. We can tap into Christ. We can pray about things. We can resolve problems. So I'm here to say my view is one of the Jewish God. Your views may be different because you grew up a different way, you believe a different religion in Islam and others that they don't really subscribe to Jesus. You have to understand that Lucifer hated Jesus. He said, singled out, he reveres God the Father. But with Jesus, he always had a problem. He tempted him. He was crucified. He was treated the worst on earth. He has a problem because he sees as a competition. I wanted to be in the Godhead, and you didn't let me in. He was a created being, elevated angel, but created, and he had always a problem with Jesus. A lot of the Gnostic scriptures and other beliefs around the world seems to deduct and eliminate Jesus out of the picture, or whether he is human, whether he was divine, and it's an attack on him. And Jesus is our lawyer. Let me be very clear. I'm a lawyer here, 6 different jurisdictions, but Jesus is our intercessor. He's our lawyer. We need to pray and reverence and respect Jesus. Each day that we mess up, he's pleading on our behalf in heaven. And this is my view and what I'm convinced of. I mean, I just, it's a conviction that I've had, but one that over time and years where I proved for myself where all the mysteries and difficulties that we see with this earth, whether it be of languages, check Babel, whether it be of race and color, Nephilim and pre-flood, mixing of blacks, which are the original man, with fallen angels. However that came to be, that's playing and Mongoloids are Asians, including my precious mom, who I love dearly, but the Asians, they share a common thing. If you look it up, I have an old index of mine. 23andMe is one genetic company, and they produce a Neanderthal index. I've rebranded it and called it the Nephilim Index. And they assign a percentage of Neanderthal DNA, each person, a member that signs up on 23andMe. I'm on all the other platforms, but single that one out. For my mother and my wife, one's white, one's Indian, they have 70 to 90% Nephilim DNA. and I have about 6%. I'm 10% Celtic. I am 40% African, but that includes Jewish, and the old Jews were black. So 40% African, 10% Celtic, 50% Indian. That's my genetic makeup. And I have a Neanderthal index of 6. My kids, they are indexed around 10 because their mom is white. And so that's my Nephilim index. They say the Neanderthal, but I don't believe in that common missing link. They're still searching for Bigfoot and the missing link. That's not there. They're still trying. If you are on a deserted island and you can have no humans on that island, and you need a new organ, I challenge you. What have medical doctors have been researching for 200 years on pig flesh and pig meat? Where does the pig figure in and factor into Darwin's theories? Do you see it on that whole famous chart where it goes from monkey to Homo erectus? Do you see the pig? I certainly didn't see it. And if you're in a deserted place and you need an organ, I know, okay, you have drugs that can help with stuff, but if you have an organ and need an organ, you're going to get it from a garden variety pig. You're not going to go and chase an ape or baboon and this sort of thing. So with my belief system, all the difficult problems with all the Neolithic sites that are there, they have no questions. They don't know how the pyramids were built. They don't know about the Muis in Easter Island. They don't know and have any explanation what happened to the Indians in Machu Picchu, or those in Stennis in Orkney and the top of Scotland with those standing stones, and they're aligned with the sun. Always that alignment with the sun. Egyptian sun worship, and the lucid one, Lucifer. You're encouraged that you worship the sun because he was the light bearer. He brought the music. He brought the action in heaven. So from his name, Lucifer, lucent, it's light. And with Freemasons, I have nothing against Freemasons, but they're encouraged to search for the light. And the top degree is 33. Why? I mean, Jesus died at 33 years old. For me, that's a bit of a slap, but that's you and that's your faith. And if you want to go down that path. But in the history of the world, the East India Company, they were around 200 years ago. They diverted the course of history. I feel that they ruled, and the history has been changed. The course of history has changed. I presented a view from Adam and Eve to the flood event, but the antediluvians, they lived, they enhanced the civilization. The fallen angels helped them understand metals and instruments of war, and even certain ways of life, irrigation and building cities. And then from the later civilizations, all enhanced. But because we live in the computer age and the AI age, in the science, and this age, who knows? With all these innovations and applications we have, when you have a battery that doesn't run out, or you have a light bulb that can stay on maybe for, remember the days when you had light bulbs and you had to go and replace them after like a month, and now you have bulbs that can last for years. Where does that technology come from? And where does it, anyone ask the question, it starts with a military application and then it suddenly forms into mainstream. I'm curious, God inspires, but the devil also inspires. And it's for us to choose which path that we're on. Remember, at the end of the day, we have to find truth for ourselves. And I advocate strongly the truth and reconciliation as we look at the next chapter of this world, what it's going to look like for our children, our posterity. And I'm not advocating anything but truth and reconciliation, but please tell the truth. And I would love to see the old scrolls at Alexandria. I'd like to see the books of Tacitus translated in English, where he observed the Black African Picts of Scotland. I'd love to see the books of Donald Munro in the 1500s. I'd like to see that full text of the Bible again, because we only saw bits and pieces from 1611. I would like to see ancient manuscripts, not some academic that has put their twist on things and given it to you and say, well, this is the truth. And they edit and redact and they, say, well, we want to make it so it's discernible to you. And we want to simplify it. And simplifying it, they apply a filter, and that requires, they can put their twist and spin on it. I'd like to see the ancient original text. If you dispute and you disagree with anything that's said, everything that all the difficult problems that I can see in this world, all the mysteries that are there that are challenge us today, I say that from my Judeo-Christian faith, I found solutions and I found answers. So I leave it to you, your audience, to figure out your level of what you in life after you have done and met the basics in life and satisfied your needs and wants, when you transcend and truly to make you feel accomplished in your hearts. And again, for me, transcendence means something to, it's not a objective term, it's very much subjective. We have to find what it is that will truly make us a feeling accomplished and to transcend. If and for me, true transcendence means a connection with a spiritual power. If you want, you can tap into your own. The singer Rihanna, she advised some kids in Barbados too about who to pray to. I'm not defaming Rihanna, and she said if God doesn't give you what you want, pray to the devil. I am a Judeo-Christian man, and that's what I am. And I believe in the faith. But if you Google it, I'm not defaming anyone, but Rihanna said that, and she's a billionaire. And I see all these guys and people who are billionaires. So, that's your call. That's your decision. You're not going to make 50 mil, just like that. It's not going to happen like that. You have Tyler Perry, of course. He made a lot. He was living in a car, and then all of a sudden he's probably a billionaire by now. And he made his money playing Medea, and people found it nice and funny. I didn't find it funny ever, as a black man who was dressing up like a woman. And what's so funny in that? And he made his money on that. So we have to know, and that just takes us back from our history. We as black people, we are leaders and kings and rulers in our right. And yet we have these people who are getting paid, the stars, to behave like buffoonery on TV, in print. It's just degrading. It puts us back and sets us back as black people. And we ought to do better. We have a right to inspire and teach the next generation and to uplift them and to teach them the right and moral code. I mean, so I will go down and it's just say just on that side. I'm side one. Side one is a Jewish God and faith. It's Seventh-day Adventism. I subscribe to a Judeo-Christian. If you want to find a box to put it in, and everything that I do and say and believe in, that's on side one. You have to search yourself if you find your truth, but be honest with yourself. And I think that's where a lot of us, we're not honest. We live in our little sort of glass towers and we feel so confident, but we're living in a very fragile world. And I'm not meaning to scare anyone, but if climate change doesn't get us, the economics and wars which are be fought, we have raging war. I live in Poland. I'm literally next door to a brewing conflict. It's not causing us to feel any better, and maybe we need to relocate. But God provides, and we rest assured that we live in Christendom, and I live with the faith and confidence that He will always protect us.
Amazing. I just sat here for the last moment and I thought to myself how God works in such ways. You said that you hardly have time to sleep, but God has laid all of this on your head and on your mind, and He has given you the mental capacity. Listeners, if you were listening from the very beginning, you would have heard Dr. McDonald, Wilton, and he's here, he's saying these dates, and he's recalling events, things that he have read and studied without reading from a book because he is so immersed in the information that he's shared with us this afternoon. And I'm simply amazed and inspired by all this information. He speaks about truth and reconciliation. He speaks about peace and love. He talks about the books of Tacitus and Donald Monroe, original full text of the Bible, the ancient manuscripts. If we but only knew the facts and the truth, I think we would have been behaving in a different way. But I thank you for spending your time this afternoon. And I think we'll have to bring you back somehow because the wealth of information that you have shared and your passion to get it out there, not only for yourself, but for the people in the Caribbean. If you're thinking yourself as less than, how will you be behaving? What can you contribute to the world and to your community if you don't know your history or you feel that you are less than? So, listeners, I want to encourage you to read some more and tell us where to find you on Facebook because I'm sure our listeners would want to get a little bit more information. So, tell us where we can find this information before we sign off.
Sure. And again, Elise, I thank you for your kind words. And as Paul says, he dies daily, each day. So I live my life. I die daily, and it's not me, but God. And there's always room to learn more. And I'm a lifelong student. I'm 48. I'm a lifelong student, and I put my hands and trust in God. He is the one where the difficult and impossible is there. He will make it possible. So you could go Google Wilton McDonald. There's only about 3 or 4 people with that name. I've checked. So it's me, my father. He's also Wilton, and I'm Dr. Wilton McDonald on Facebook. The profile is open, so you can see. You don't have to be my friend. I'm near 5,000 anyway, but the profile is open, and you can see all the writings and posts that I will make, and I will continue my journey by looking at the other haplogroups and cousins where I can connect with and help them with their genealogy search and to connect with those European ancestors of theirs who a lot of people in Caribbean, we get to a certain point and then we say, well, we can't go anymore because the only stage is going to Africa. Well, I've been to Africa and I, again, found that 1 in 1 billion that shared a connection with me. So people can do the same, and chances are you'll find your connections in Europe. But if there's one source that you could research immediately, go and find the Ben Franklin essay of 1751. It's titled The Increase of Mankind. And what Masons love to do is that they love to hide things in plain sight. So he was a Freemason. His face is still on the $100 bill. It's called The Increase of Mankind by Ben Franklin, the year 1751. The text is there in a U.S. government archive, and I share the link all the time. If you just pop it into a search Google, you'll find this, and it's paragraph 24. The essay has paragraphs, and if you look at paragraph 24, he states clearly that the number of whites at the time of writing 1751 was proportionably very small. And he goes further by saying the Swedes, the Germans, the Franks, the French, the Spanish, these people are swarthy, black, dark people in 1751. And again, common sense should dictate. If you look at common sense, the UN, the United Nations, has published stats on population growth. Our population went up like a hockey stick. It went up exponentially from the 1800s, and it was not even a billion people, 500 million people before 1700. And then the numbers went up to over a billion, and today we're standing at 8 billion people. But of the 8 billion people on Earth, the number of pure whites, if you look at it, drill it down and find, it's 15%. 15%. But yet, again, most of the non-whites own very little of the wealth. And that's the disparity that we have to say bring to the truth and reconciliation table. But 85%, it's non-white, and 15%. So if the world was indeed mostly white, going back 500 years, and in the movies, and we believe the Viking stories, what happened to the numbers? Did the Black Plague kill off a lot of people? We know that blacks have been subject to the most cruel treatment from the West African story. But even the story from the 1600s, from Oliver Cromwell, when he deported and killed a lot of blacks who were blacks in Europe, and deported them and killed them in the 1600s, and created vast open space for Europe. We don't hear about those stories, but blacks have been alienated and annihilated, and yet their numbers are still, they proliferate in abundance. So it is that we look at common sense and we look at the UN stats, and we have to read for ourselves, read more. But look at the Ben Franklin essay, 1751, on the increase of mankind. And this the final point I promise is that those persons who are prominent, who are VIPs and blue blooded, blue is very close to black. So when you say that someone is a blue blood, chances are they are more of your brother than you think. So all those people like George Barclay, or sorry, not just George Barclay, but Lord George Barclay of 1785, he's an African haplogroup. He's an E like me. We don't seem to match closely, but he's in the same category as an African. So how many more blue bloods are out there? Chances are those that are in power and position who close and lock their DNA profiles away, they are of African descent because they're the original man. And everyone, we all are just but servants in this current crumbling hegemony.
Thank you so much. What a mouthful and what an inspirational, sensational Sunday. Thank you so much. I have been inspired. I have a lot of reading, researching, and catching up to do. I am amazed this afternoon. Thank you so much, Dr. McDonald.
Appreciate it. Thank you too for having me. Well, well, due to my parents, I mean, they obviously have done something right. I'm here, and they are in Cayman listening. They spent a month with me in Poland. I love them to pieces. They are, in good health, and my prayers always with them. And of course, my sister, Kishala, her husband, Mackenzie, they're in Cayman. Yeah, so we look forward to meeting up this summer, like always, in Cayman or Jamaica. So stay blessed. And for me, our prayers are always with them. Those are, my closest relatives in Cayman.
Awesome.
In the mix. Back to back, beat to beat.
listening to Flashpoint.
Until